Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, and welcome to our show. This is Janie, your co-host, and I'm not real sure what our topic is going to be today, but our call-in number is 646-200-4169. Call in. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Janie. Excuse my voice. I have a little bit of a throat cleansing happening today, so my voice isn't very clear today. My apology. And I would love it if somebody else would call in and give us a nice long question so I can rest the voice as we're going through the show. In any event, our work is that of forgiveness. Our vote, our desire is to support you in learning the tools with which to change literally every drama, trauma, pain, turmoil, hostility, or fear in your life to the presence of love. And through the ancient Aramaic technology of true forgiveness, that is absolutely entirely doable. Although for someone stuck in those things, it seems like, well, that just couldn't be possible. You mean I could actually live my life without all this drama and trauma and pain and turmoil? Yes, you can. So if you have any questions about what that means or anything you'd like to share if you've been using the tools, please give us a call at 646-214. 200, 4169. 646-200-4169. And if you want to access the forgiveness tool that we teach, please go to our website, www.whyagain.com. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. It's a free download. You can download the instruction set. That's the first link under that Download Worksheet section. And then there's a second link that's the actual worksheet. So we would invite you to go ahead and download those tools and begin to work with the ancient Aramaic technology of forgiveness. And it's quite the opposite of what our culture teaches about forgiveness. It's not about me letting you off the hook because there's something painful happening inside of me, but in fact, the ancient Aramaic technology of forgiveness is about how to remove what's painful from inside of you. It's an awesome tool, an awesome process to enter into. I think that, or I suspect that forgiveness was disappeared in its true original form, so that those who had instilled different forms of hostility and fear in people in order to control them wouldn't know how to unload those things. But I'll just offer that all hostility, all fear, all grief, all pain, all trauma, all drama is removable from your experience via forgiveness. And Jeannie tells me that we have a caller on the line.
Yes, 417-598-598. You are on the air.
Yes, hi. I'm a first-time caller.
And what's your name?
My name is Corey.
Hi, Corey. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I was instructed to call you by my good friend, Sam Brotherton.
Ah, okay, cool. Fabulous. She had written us that you'd likely be calling today.
Yes. Well, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I had my first session with her last night, and I went in very skeptical, and but I went through the motions. I put the pen to paper, and had an absolute breakthrough. What you've developed is amazing, and we finally got to one worksheet. In the first worksheet we did, it didn't work because it's a multi-issue problem, But then we decided to go a different direction, and it was absolutely amazing what I found out about myself and what I was able to get rid of. When I finally came to the realization what the real issue was, I literally gasped. And Sam helps me to overcome that, and it is just absolutely freeing and amazing when that realization happens.
Well, that's a fabulous experience to have, and of course, it's an absolutely systematic, reliable experience to have if you do forgiveness on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And I'm telling you that after she showed me the 3 filters, the hostility, fear, and love, I was the victim of domestic abuse last weekend, and working through your process, I mean, I realized that all I've ever done was look through the love filter for my partner. And I initially had some hostility, but then I looked past the hostility, and there was never any fear in there, but I did have some hostility. But once you look through the love filter, it's just absolutely amazing, the transformation in your frame of mind.
For sure. And one of the things that we point out is, and pardon my voice, but one of the things we point out is that hostility is always secondary. So, you know, in the original Aramaic, they said, well, how many of these worksheets do we have to do? Is 7 enough? And the answer that came back was 77 times 70. And so you're very likely, as you continue to work around that issue and other issues in your life, to find the fear that's still in hiding. You know, as you said, you found something out about yourself, and each time we enter into true forgiveness, there's a part of our mind that we've been hiding from ourselves. You know, when we deny ownership, I don't know if you've been listening to the show recently, but when we deny ownership, what we do is we create a dissociated state, a part of our minds that we're totally out of touch with and have no control over. No ability to change it. What happens is each time you forgive, you find another piece of your mind that you go, oh my God, you got to be kidding. I would have known that about myself, wouldn't I? It's like, well, no, actually, that's why we call it the unconscious or the dissociated mind, because we don't know it's there. And that technology. And thank you for the acknowledgement, but I can't claim to have put it together. I was blessed enough to find the ancient Aramaic teachings of the man named Yeshua, and he's the one that put that process together, not me.
Well, I will tell you that just by doing what you're doing and doing what Sam's doing, we need to get this out there. More people need to know about this, you know. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and through Sam, the work that she's doing. It's absolutely a blessing to me.
Awesome. Well, for 40 years, we have traveled the globe. Janie and I are on the road 6 to 10 months of the year. We're actually out in Las Vegas, Nevada right now, 6 to 10 months of the year. And when we travel, we pay our own expenses, and our workshops are done free so that the tools are available to anybody who's ready to jump in and do their work. And so if there's a way that you can support that, that would be awesome. And that's what our commitment is to keep it moving in every direction that we possibly can on a global basis. And just taking that worksheet and doing the same thing that Sam did with you, with another person, and you'll have people who have the same appreciation for you as you have for Sam, and that's what's going to make the difference on the planet.
Well, something that I learned yesterday was you don't even have to be willing to find the answer. You just have to be willing to listen, because, like I said, I went into this very skeptical, and you don't even have to put faith in the system. Just be honest with yourself, and holy cow, the things that you're going to learn, you know?
Yeah, you don't have to believe a thing. You just put the pen to the paper and use the tool, and it works. That's all. It just works because it works within the confines of how this whole human structure works. And it's so fabulous when you go back and really study the ancient Aramaic. We actually do a 16-day course each year at Heartland called Laws of Living. And in that 16 days, we spend all of that time looking at the Aramaic technology for healing a life. And there is so much. I mean, this is just scratching the surface of what is available. And we're just delighted that you've gotten that benefit and are going to pass it along.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you very much for your work.
You're most welcome. And
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sam. Is Sam on the line by chance?
She's not on the line, but she is in the chat room.
Well, I wonder if we should encourage her to call us.
Yes.
Sam,
Love
would you call
Sam.
in?
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay,
Thank you for calling.
Awesome.
So while there's a space here, while we're waiting to see if Sam's going to call in, she says she'll call. So she's going to be calling in here in just a second. But there was some private chat going on, and they were concerned about your voice sounding different. And I told them in the chat room that you're in a healing crisis. They wanted to know if you were sick. And I said, it's a healing crisis. And just as a brief explanation of what that is, if you're not familiar with it, when you put energies into your system, into your field that don't belong, they create symptoms, whether it's a cold or whatever, the flu, it creates a symptom. And as you're healing, that energy has to come back out. And so Michael is just in a healing. There's things moving back out of his system, and he's doing lemon water and cayenne pepper and taking it right along. So I believe this is Sam on the line. Hi there.
And it feels like hell. That's a claim. One of the reasons why real healing is not very popular is because we have to go back and deal with what's in there. And so, we're all in process. I haven't met anybody who's finished yet, and so we just keep moving forward and deal with the next level and the next layer. And I'm dealing with one right now.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Sam. How do you be, young lady?
I'm great.
What an awesome acknowledgement of what you're doing.
Well, Corey is a very, very special person, and he's someone that everyone who knows him loves him dearly, and he had a major, major breakthrough last night, and it was wonderful to be a part of that. I was so excited when I called Monday because I knew we were on this leg of his healing, and I wanted to share my appreciation for knowing the work. Corey and I met for dinner last night, and he was quite nervous, and I knew that he wasn't totally into understanding what was about to happen, and we went back to his house, and I explained a great deal to him, the situation he had been involved in. He was so excited yesterday because he said he's looking through a love filter through this situation. And he saw the difference because he knew where he was headed before in the hostility, and he was able to shift to love. And he said it's like everything around him changed when he started working through that. And the first, and Corey, I know Corey well enough. He said he's an open book, so he won't mind me sharing this with you. But the first page we did last night was the codependence worksheet. And he had a lot of advice for the people who had offended him, and the main advice was don't judge. And what he discovered on his worksheet is that Corey doesn't judge other people, but he discovered that he was judging himself. And I was hoping he'd stay on long enough to explain that, because he was in tears last night of discovering that, and it was a huge breakthrough in his life, and he's just thrilled that he went through this process last night.
So, Corey, I acknowledge you for the power you have and how awesome it is that with those self-judgments, you're just able to pull somebody right in and cooperate with you to play it out. That's the kind of power we humans have, so that's pretty cool. And, maybe this would be a good place to talk about the filters in the mind. If you go back into the Aramaic language, the word that was used when they said, what's the first law? There are 17 different words that have been translated by one English word, love. And one of those words is the word Rakhma. Rakhma, it turns out, is a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain that allows your brain only to use intentions keyed to love in forming your goals. And when you tap into that filter, and this is why they said it is the first law, what you've done is you've opened a gateway for love, a human life, to enter into your physiology. And most, if you hold a newborn child, everybody knows what that thing called love is. And what the world does is it specializes in closing that down as quickly as possible and locking us into hostility and fear, which is tantamount to spiritual death. People who live, who appear to be alive in spiritual death, live in a world of drama, trauma, problems, everybody's the enemy, and on and on and on it goes. once we recognize and reopen that gateway, we get to reclaim a human life, and all of a sudden, the mind shows us totally and completely different evidence. When Rakhma is the active filter in the mind, the only quality of reality that the mind is able to form is that based in love. There are two other options. One of those filters is the fear filter. The other one is the hostility filter. And when the hostility filter is the active filter in the mind, the only quality of reality that the mind can produce is a reality that shows us something irritating about our object of attention. So if you look at somebody and you're irritated, you know you've broken the first law. You know that you're looking through hostility. Hostility, we'll kind of carry on our codependence conversation. Hostility is the quickest way there is to jump into a codependent relationship. Because when I'm in hostility, my mind is using data that is irritating to me. That data forms a picture of what I think is you, and I want to blame you for my irritation. So now I'm locked into codependence. And hostility is a drug. It is a way that we anesthetize ourselves against our fear and pain. And so once we start to drop that drug, we're able to start to get in touch with deeper levels of what's happening inside of us. The third filter is the filter of fear. And when the fear filter is active and we look at any given object of attention, the only quality of reality that the mind can produce is that which shows us something threatening about our object of attention. And so we've got a choice. We can be in harmony with the first law. And, people look at the first law and they go, oh, that religious stuff, that's all hogwash. Excuse me. This is the key to claiming a human life. This is the key to keeping your mind sane. It's got nothing to do with theology and religion. It's got to do with here's how your mechanism works. I know when we travel, we oftentimes end up in somebody's home and they've got a satellite dish and they've got a DVR and they've got a this and they've got a that and they've got a big screen TV and you sit there with all these controls and it's like, holy Christmas, how do I get this thing to work? Click a button, click a button, click a button. God, how do you do this? And when somebody says, well, here's the first law of being able to watch a DVD as you push this button and this button and this button, you've got a protocol. And, you get to sit and watch your DVD. If you go back to the Aramaic, it's as absolutely as practical as here's the protocol for operating the whole entertainment system. The protocol for operating a human mind and keeping it inoculated against the insanity of hostility and fear, of threat and irritation, is you keep Rakhma active, first order of business. Of course, you can't do that if you don't know what's possible. And that simple piece of understanding was lost thousands of years ago, and the Greeks told us that, loving your neighbor was about the behavior you do to your neighbor. Love of creator, neighbor, self, which was the first law, has nothing to do with how you treat the creator, how you treat your neighbor, how you treat yourself. Love is a condition in your mind that allows your mind to use sane data in producing its guidance and its realities. Out of that flows sane behavior toward the creator's neighbor self. But people want the behavior without knowing and without understanding what the condition is. It's a literal filter in the frontal lobes of the brain. And, there are several communities in the United States. One of them is in Southern California. I can remember several years ago, we connected with a community there that's a Aramaic-speaking population. And when we approached them with this word Rakhma, they said that in their tradition, they had lost the definition. They didn't know exactly what it was. However, their tradition stated that it was the most precious jewel that you could have. And it is, because it's what allows you, in the face of all adversity, whatever somebody else is doing, to maintain a human life, to not give your human life up to it.
And that's exactly what Corey has done. When the first thing I do when I start working with people is explain those three filters, because I know how powerful it is to have that knowledge of the importance of love, and that's what enabled him to get to the space where he was actually able to do this work last night, because of the love he was holding. And to me it's just an accessible litmus test to always have with you, so you know where your mind is. As I was leaving last night, he said, I finally have tools. He says, I have a whole toolbox now. I texted Corey and asked him to call back in. He's at work, so he's not hearing this show, so he may come back on the line because I thought it would be, he didn't realize that we could both be on at the same time, I think, when you asked me to call in.
Well, I'll watch for him to pop back up on the switchboard there. And but in the meantime, I'll add in, too, give Michael's voice a little rest here. It is amazing how when you switch filters, how you can see things so differently, and how when you've worked through something that you see something differently. And I've shared this once before online, but we were in a workshop. It was a weekend breath session, and one of the things that I had worked on for years in doing worksheets, and someone else that was in the chat room was like, well, they had done a couple of worksheets, and I was like, well, I wish 2 was all I had to do, because I've been doing them ever since I met Michael and still aren't finished. But I had been doing several worksheets on not feeling like I was worth listening to or wasn't worthy of, being paid attention to or whatever. It was just self-put down. So anyway, I'd been doing worksheets repeatedly on that, and there wasn't a point in time where I was like, I'm done with it. But we were doing this breath workshop for this weekend, and this, as I always do, I put in 2 cents here and there, and this gentleman, he had been processing, and so I put in, what I thought and offered him some information, and then we went on with the class, and when we took an intermission for lunch, this girl came up to me, and she was like, can I talk to you a moment? And I said, sure. So we went in another room. I thought she wanted to process, and she was like, did you notice that guy didn't even pay attention to you or look at you when you were giving him information? And didn't you just feel like you were dissed? And it was awesome because it had not even entered my conscious awareness that he wasn't paying attention to me. And before, that would have been totally what put me over the edge and was like, see, I knew I wasn't worth listening to or whatever. And so it was just wonderful feedback for me because it showed me that I had actually worked through it and had gone to the next level. And the exact same situation happened, but I wasn't emotionally attached to it. So it was like just something else that happened. And it's totally looking at the situation through different eyes, through a different filter. And that was great. And so I told her, I said, thank you for telling me that. I said, because I had not paid attention, and that's wonderful feedback for me. And by the way, you probably need to do some worksheets on that because it really brought some stuff up for her. So she probably had some of the same issues.
Janie,
because she noticed it.
Go ahead, Sam.
No, I just said she had the issues because she noticed it.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's what I try to tell people when I'm working with them is that, they're like, well, but people do crazy things. And it's like, yeah, people do crazy things. But if you have dealt with what's in you, you can't control what other people do, but if you've dealt with what's in you, then it doesn't bring that up. Whether it's fear or anger or frustration or self-loathing or whatever it is, if that's not in you, it doesn't matter what they do in your world, you're going to stay connected and it's going to be fine. But if you have that in you, then it's going to show it to you, and that's what your work is. It's not to try to fix that other person or make them be different, but it's to work with what's coming up in you.
And one of the things to offer at this point might be that you go, any of the listeners go to the website and get a copy of My Commitment, which is used for working with others, and then the first person that you use with yourself in the mirror. And it's a way of starting to build the brain cells to maintain this condition of Rakhma, of love. And Janie, you had a gentleman that approached you after a Healing Through Relationships workshop a few months back that was sharing that he was on the verge of divorce, and you had a suggestion for him. Would you like to share that and what the result was?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I told him, about he had come to the Healing Through Relationships, and I told him about the commitment and to read that, that there was the one that you read to another person, but then there was also the commitment that you read to yourself in the mirror. And so then a few weeks later, he called and he was like, I'm using the commitment and it's awesome. It has turned our whole world around, and we're back like honeymooners, and it's great. And I'm like, that's phenomenal. I said, is she reading it back to you? And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, when you read her the commitment, is she reading the commitment back to you? And he goes, she doesn't know I'm doing this. He was like going in the bathroom or something and just imagining her being there and reading it to her. And yet, just because he was putting that energy in and he was changing the way that he looked at it, it was changing their relationship and changing. It's like, you know, I tell people all the time, when we were kids, we used to play this game called tug of war, where, you know, people were on different ends of the rope, and you're pulling back and forth, and you're trying to pull the other person across a ditch or a line or whatever. And if you drop your end of the rope, it changes their game, whether they want it to change or not. They can't, you know, it's going to change if you quit playing. And so when we change the game that we play in and we decide that we're going to connect to Rakhma, then, you know, it changes our outlook, but then it changes the world around us. It changes what we bring to us, what we're vibrating and resonating.
It's
and
so
when we
true.
when we live in a game of blaming someone else, we live in a false self, and that false self, the who we think we are, is defined by the dynamics of our power person. And most people live their whole lives totally and completely unconsciously in that dynamic. We did an intensive a couple of years ago in Florida, and there were about 25 or so people there, and we're maybe on day 5 of the intensive, and we were getting to do some hands-on. We're doing some hands-on energy field work training, and this woman decided she didn't want to be with the partner that she'd been with since the beginning of the workshop, and so she went to David. I don't know if David's on the line, but went to David and wanted David to be her partner. And he's like, well, you know, I'm already working with a partner, and we're pretty settled in, and I checked with my partner, and they don't want to change, so I don't think I'm going to do that. And this woman just went kind of stark, raving berserk. I mean, really, you know, I mean, you want to talk about hostility, up it came. And I mean, it was just like everybody scattered to the wind in terms of their behavior. So we processed through that, got to the other side of it, and in the morning we did a session around what had happened the night before. This was an evening session this happened in. And we went from person to person to person. And, you know, if you've been listening to the codependence situations we've been talking about, or the workshop we've been talking about over the last few weeks, there are 3 behaviors when we're working out of a codependent mind. And it's all related to the levels of stress and all related to the dynamics with our power person. So the 3 levels are: when you have no stress, your mind will automatically guide you to do whatever you did to get along with your power person. When stress starts to build, you'll automatically do what you did to resist and survive with your power person. And when you become ultra-stressed, you'll automatically do what your power person did that you hated the most. And so we just went from person to person to person. And so now, you know, when that came up, what was going on inside of you? What was going on in your mind? What was your behavior? And we went through everybody in the group, and everybody in the group, it was just like, oh, my God, is that what codependence means? Is that what a power person? Holy mackerel. And everybody had totally right down the line except for one guy. And one guy he just kind of piped up. He said, I didn't have a problem with it. It was no big deal. I just took my partner. We were in a center where we had several rooms. And he said, I just took my partner down to the room that we were going to work in, and we just went to work. So, you know, that wasn't true for me. And, you know, we're so definable when the stress is up and the chips are down. And I said to him, well, okay, let's go back. Now, if you think about your power person, who was it? Oh, definitely Dad. I said, well, when the stress was up and the chips are down, what did Dad do? And his face got real long. It's like, oh, my God, he just left the house and went to work.
That's exactly what he did.
Say it again, Jeannie.
I said exactly what he just did.
Yeah.
And we do have another caller on the line when you're ready.
Awesome, let's go for it.
Is that Corey? I had asked Corey to call back. I don't know if that's him or not. Is that the same area code before?
This is area code 406. You're on the air.
Hi, it's just Lisa C. And I just wanted to call and say, hi. I had court this morning, and it was for custody with my children, and I had sent my commitment cards to my children on their birthdays, and my former husband said that it wasn't appropriate for the children because they were too young, and that I had read my commitment to the children over the phone, and he was kind of grousing about that. And so I picked up my book bag from Heartland, my commitment book bag, and I read my commitment to him, and I dedicated it to him, his wife, the lawyer, and the judge. And I looked at each one of them as I said my commitment. So she said that she wasn't going to make a judgment for 4 to 6 weeks, but I just want it to be said that I did my best, and I read my commitment. So.
Well, Lisa, we absolutely hold a space, and I acknowledge your courage for stepping into that venue. I know that you did a lot of work to get to face that day in court, and over the last year that you were at Heartland, and processed through so many layers. So the courage to stand up and do that in the face of all that adversity is just monumental. Monumental. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I really came from a space of love too. I looked him in the eye. I had to read it, but I looked him in the eye, and I sent it to him. I didn't see. I kind of was holding a goal, so I'm going to do worksheets around that. But I was kind of holding a goal that it would register some sort of emotion with him, and unfortunately, or I guess it's not unfortunately. I won't judge it, but I was just kind of hoping that there would be some sort of human life in there, but, that's all right. I'll just do my work.
Well, Lisa, one of the things I've learned over 40 years of doing this work is that not everybody's ready at the moment when I think they should be, and my job is to deliver it, and when they receive it, I've seen it. Too? Yeah, like all of us. I've seen people take 10 years. I remember one woman who came to a set of workshops. I didn't remember her from the workshops, but she had bought a copy of my book, and 10 years later, she was going through a divorce, and she shared that she had been looking for a book on her bookshelf, and a book from a higher shelf fell down and hit her in the head, and it was, why is this happening to me again? She had bought it when she did the workshops 10 years earlier. She had gone through all the workshops, bought the material, put it on the shelf, and forgot about it. And she said she just absolutely devoured that book. And, it was, I forget, it was like late spring, and we weren't going to be doing an intensive for a couple of months, or early spring, pardon me. It was going to be a couple of months away. And she's like, but I can't wait. I have to do an intensive now. I want to go to Heartland tomorrow and do an intensive. I know I need to do it. It's like, well, when we're ready, we're ready. And my job, and I'd offer your job, is just to accept it in yourself and deliver it. And you don't know, it might be 10 years or 10,000 years from now that either one or both get it and go, oh my God, what a gift this woman gave us.
I thought what was interesting, though, is when I was speaking, I looked at his lawyer, and we made eye contact, and I could actually feel him, if I may say so. I could just feel something with him, and also the judge, because I think I can probably assure everyone out there listening that I doubt anyone has ever read my commitment to their former abusive husband in court before. I don't know. So I think it was kind of shocking to everyone.
Well, there's an awesome line in the Course in Miracles. It says, millions yet unborn will benefit from the work you do. And what a window you've opened in relationships, a window that you have personally opened right now. You go back to Yeshua, and he says, I have left the door open wide, and nobody can close it. Nobody can close the window you opened today. You opened a space for something new to show up on planet Earth in the crazy relationships that we tend to create. And so I just hold the space of how awesome that is.
Well, thank you, and of course I'm still super processing, so I'm just going to let you guys go. But I just wanted to I did type that into you, an email into you, but I figured that since you were talking about my commitment, I figured that I would share my story. So
awesome.
Anyway,
well, we join you. It sounds like it might be time to just lay down, do some still point breathing, and go through this layer that's up, and we'll just hold the space at a distance.
Okay, thank you, and aloha to everybody.
Lovely, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you for calling in and sharing
Bye.
that. That's awesome.
Okay.
Whew.
How awesome
One of the
that
things
she took that to the courtroom.
Absolutely. One of the things I just thought of when she was saying aloha as she left there is when we were in Hawaii. One of the things that we learned, we actually were blessed that we had some native Hawaiians that were willing to take us around and show us the real culture and not the tourist stuff. And of course, we were doing workshops there. And one of the things that he told us was that the Hawaiians, when they greet, they put forehead to forehead, and they breathe each other's nasal air. They don't breathe the air from the mouth because they say there's so much vile stuff that comes out of people's mouth, words-wise and everything, that it's not clean air. But they breathe each other's nasal air. And so they're holding Rakhma to Rakhma. That's where the filters that Michael was talking about, it's in the frontal lobes of the brain. And so they're putting their Rakhma to Rakhma together and breathing each other's air. And then that's why they called them the white man the Howleys, is because when the white man came along, they stuck their hand out. They wouldn't put forehead to forehead to greet. And so Howley means greets without breath. And so I thought that was awesome. And then that also made me think of anybody that has seen the movie Avatar. That's one of the things that they do in that even is they put their foreheads together and they breathe each other's nasal air. And I just think that's real powerful. And that's the aloha, which is equal to Rakhma.
Yeah, when we're at Heartland and we're doing an intensive and we've got, a size of group that we can do it, we always, when we do the still point breathing, is put people in the circle with all the heads pointing inward so that filter activated in one tends to resonate and activate in everybody. And that it creates such an awesome transforming power for anything that the breath accesses and moves. It's just absolutely phenomenal what happens. And mentioning that trip to Hawaii, Jeannie, we were at a Unity church there, Unity in Diamond Head, and we did a week of workshops. And it was a pretty busy and a pretty good week, and so they asked us if we'd come back again before we left, and it actually turned out it was a tough thing for us to do, but we had to spend an extra couple of weeks in Hawaii in February. But, we got through it. We did it. And in that second workshop series that we did, we had 3 different people come to us who shared that they had been going home after the church service to commit suicide. 3 different people. And 6 weeks later, all 3 of them were excited about their lives, delighted that they had tools and were moving forward. Not that they were finished with what was going on by any stretch, but just awesome shifts that can take place so quickly when we've got the tools. And sadly, the tools have been just about disappeared from the planet. And so the bottom line is the how-to of it. And if you're not sure about the how-to of forgiveness, or if the conversation that says, I don't forgive other people, I forgive the realities inside of me, if that conversation doesn't make sense to you yet, if you don't have the brain cells for that, then we invite you to just be with that, dig out the worksheet process, and see what it is that has to be done in you. And it is a process, and it does take time. And as you take the time to do that, then everything becomes totally, completely transformed. And as we transform, such awesome things happen in and around us. It's amazing. And there's an economist, John Maynard Keynes, who many people are probably familiar with his name. Some authorities tout him as one of the most important people of the 20th century. And he says this: the difficulty lies not in the new ideas, but in escaping the old ones. You and I were taught forgiveness is about, I'm going to let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. Forgiveness has nothing to do with me letting you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. Forgiveness is how I go inside my mind and change its content. In the ancient teachings, I said, be transformed by the renewal of the mind. But, of course, the question becomes, well, how do you do that? How do you forgive? Well, the technology is free. It's available on our website. You can download the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again, free. You can also buy a copy of it, which we'd be delighted if you do. You can buy a 4-hour or 2-hour DVD, a 4-hour CD, the commitment we present in the workshop, Healing Through Relationships. So all those things are on our website. But the book you can download free. The forgiveness technology you can download free. And undoing the old belief that forgiveness is about me letting you off the hook, and realizing that if you and I interact and pain comes up in me, it's because I have pain in me. And rather than denying my pain and dissociating from it, which means I still get to feel it, but I get to blame you, which is a pretty bizarre solution, when I come out of denial, when I forgive, and thank you for sharing that with us earlier, when you called in about the change you got in that worksheet last night, you find out something about yourself that you didn't know. Sometimes the things we find out about ourselves aren't very pleasant, and that's why most people don't want to find them out. But the truth is, and you got to realize a principle, if you don't let yourself contact it, if you don't let yourself come into direct conscious relationship with it, it runs your life. Has that been true in your experience?
In mine? Yes, definitely.
Ma'am.
Definitely.
What do you see happening with people when you support them in getting in touch with those parts of themselves and changing them?
Miraculous things happen when Corey did the pendants sheet last night, and we were looking at his advice for others. I said, I would just like for you to think of that as advice for yourself, and his stress level rose. He became very agitated at me, and he said, I'm not judgmental. And I said, well, there's probably something hidden in there that we haven't gotten in touch with. It's in the unconscious, and that's why you're not aware of it. And then later he said, how did you know that was there? And I said, you wrote it. You're the one that wrote it. And I knew it was there because your agitation came up. Your stress level increased because it was something you didn't want to look at, as I learned from you. And then when he was writing on his worksheet, and all of a sudden he literally gasped. I wish we'd had a video of that moment, because he just gasped, and then he broke down sobbing because there it was right in front of him, and he discovered it himself. And to me, that's the beauty of this work. For those of the people listening that aren't aware of this work, this is self-healing. This is work that you can do yourself. He discovered that last night himself. I was there for support and to facilitate, but this was inner work that he was doing within his own mind. And that's the beauty of this work. No one does it for you. You do it yourself.
Yeah, and our goal is to empower people to be able to do it for themselves, not that they have to come to some specialist or somebody who's going to fix them. If you go back to the work of Yeshua, his work was about, I come to bring you life and bring it more abundantly. I come to bring you the tools to connect you directly to the Spirit of Truth, which will heal you. And it's just, when we allow that energy of love and truth to come in, it transforms everything in us, and it's something we can do for ourselves. Sadly, the official world that wants to own the teachings of the man named Yeshua, or own the theology, who've made up their little dogmas and their little ditties about how, it's theirs and you've got to come to them, and that they're the special representative. Don't expect them anytime soon to be jumping on the bandwagon of, oh yeah, this is Aramaic, it wasn't Greek, and finding out what the truth is about it. Actually, there's a physicist named Max Planck I love to quote, and He's a Nobel Prize-winning physicist. And here's what he says, and this applies across the board, whether it's the financial world, whether it's the business world, whether it's the scientific world, whether it's the theological world. He says, a new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up that's familiar with it. Sadly, those who profess, I remember doing a presentation for a service club up in Lansing, Michigan several years ago, and there was a preacher there, had been a preacher for 50 years, and I presented some of Yeshua's Aramaic ideas. And afterward, the fellow had invited me. There was a two-story building that we were in, and I was upstairs, and this minister, and the fellow had invited me. We're at the bottom of the stairs, and he said something to the effect of, it sounds like you and Michael are doing some of the same work. And this guy's like, oh, no, man, no. I don't have anything to do with what he's doing. And I overheard this conversation, so I went right downstairs. I said, yeah, I don't understand what's happening, but, would you be willing to go out and share a cup of coffee with me? And so we went out, and I started to talk about the Aramaic translation of Yeshua's words. And his response was, I don't care what he said. I mean, you could have blown me off my chair with a feather. This guy who's been preaching Jesus, the Greek name, which really comes from Zeus, which is Hail Zeus. His name was Yeshua. He said, I don't care what he said. And it was just like, whoa. And so the conversion of our own minds, the idea of conversion isn't about bringing somebody into our church. The idea of conversion is to bring somebody from a fear and hostility-based mind to a love-based mind. And it sounds like you got a great convert last night with that one.
Yes,
yeah.
Definitely. I see so much resistance in people because they don't know what they're going into, and our world is so fear-based. So on the way to Branson last night to meet with Corey, and I had shared with you that he had put this off for 4 years. He kept saying, someday I'm going to come to you and you're going to help me with what I'm dealing with. And, I wanted to kind of be prepared for that resistance. And I love analogies. Analogies really help me see things more clearly. So I was trying to think of an analogy I could use in case I met with resistance. And this is what I came up with. And I didn't meet with resistance, but I shared it with him anyway. And I said, Corey, what if someone came to you and offered you this huge mansion that was worth millions of dollars and wanted to gift that to you, to give it to you for your care, for your well-being, for you to have forever? However, the only stipulation with the gift is that it was just filled with garbage. It was filled with crap and garbage and just anything you could think of, and it was totally filled. Would you still accept it? And he said, well, of course I would. And I said, what would you do? And he said, well, I'd clean it up if it was that valuable. And I said, well, guess what? Yourself, your body, your psychic, your mind, and everything is as valuable, so it's time to clean out the garbage. And he said, wow.
Gee, is that copyrighted? Can I use that one?
Yes, that's why I'm telling you, use that, because as I'm driving and that came to me and I'm going, wow, that's what we do. We keep this garbage in this wonderful vessel that we call a body, and we don't need to do that. We need to clean it out. If someone gifted us with a mansion, we would clean it out, so why not clean out ourselves?
Sam, that was a question I was getting ready to ask you earlier. It's one thing for Michael and I to tell people, oh, well, you need to do your work, you need to, whatever. And they might have a tendency to think, well, we're just trying to get them to do what we do. So from somebody else other than us, I'm sure you've run into people who are just like, well, I'm not cleaning that out. I want somebody else to come clean it out, and then I'll move into it. What do you do to handle that?
I've learned that I can't argue against their resistance. I can just be there in a state of love and say, if you want to hang on to it, hang on to it. I recall my first breath session with Michael. I'm lying on the floor after just heaving all of this stuff that I was holding from the murders and the suicide in my family. And I'm lying on the floor, and I had 7 people around me doing energy field work, and Michael was at my head helping me breathe. And I'm resisting, and I'm tightening up, and I still recall Michael's words, do you want to hang on to it, or do you want to let it go? So that's my response to anyone that doesn't want to clean it up. Why would you want to hang on to it? I'm offering you tools to let it go. And it's still their choice, and I can't argue against anyone who doesn't want to do that. But when I came up with this analogy last night, and please use it because I see the beauty in it. You know, this is our body is our vessel. Why would that be less important than a mansion? It's time to clear all of this stuff up that doesn't belong in there because it's garbage. It's lies that we bought into. It's lies that we've told ourselves, and we've focused our whole world around that. Let's clear it out and be who we truly are, and that's love.
I definitely join you and support you in that. And incidentally, in the Aramaic language, the word Satan is not some dude with a red suit, a tail, and a pitchfork that's out to get us. In the actual original teachings of the man named Yeshua, the word Satan is a lowercase word, not an uppercase word. It's not the name of a person or a personality. And it means the resistor, one who misleads. Our mind was given to us to be a high servant, and our minds fell from grace. You know, we kind of cast them out when we filled it with hostility and fear and garbage. And so what that resistor will do when we're invited to go inside and face the deeper issues in ourselves, what tends to happen is, oh no, I don't want to look at this. I don't want to deal with this. There's actually a great scene, much like the scene you spoke about with Corey's stress coming up and pointing it at you. There's a great scene in the movie King's Speech, where the therapist who's working with the king, and true story, who's working with the king who's has a speech impediment, the therapist finally gets the courage to confront him and say, you know, sir, you need to face your fear. And, I mean, it's a really powerful scene in the film because it shows exactly what the non-being mind will do. And the king rises up and he just lambastes this guy. I mean, he pukes all over him and, you know, calls him every name in the book and, like, you know, you're out of here kind of thing. And most people, when they're confronted with truth, blockage of truth is a way most people are addicted to managing their stress. Don't show me this, don't show me this, don't show me this. And therefore I don't have to experience its stress. Well, you don't experience its stress consciously, but in your tissue structure you experience its stress. So when confronted with truth that brings that stress forward, what happens is the stress level goes up, and most people have their stress attached to getting rid of the source of the information, rather than attached to self-correction. We can rewire that when we understand the principle by which everything operates. And, you know, you go back into the ancient scriptures, and they talked about, for a lack of knowledge, my people have been destroyed. And, you know, there are people who sit around and say, all it takes is belief. Excuse me, for a lack of knowledge. Do you get it? You got to know how it works. And then you've got to work it. Because you can have all the faith in the world, and if you don't do your work, it's dead. There's nothing that will change. You can have all the belief and all the faith you want. There's work to be done. And so when we get into that state of resistance, and the mind has got a whole story, and the mind will project its dissociated part, and it's all somebody else's fault. And once you start actually forgiving, using the actual ancient Aramaic technology of forgiveness, and those things start to break down, then what happens is your stress comes up, but the stress is now attached to self-correction rather than attached to attacking or getting rid of the source of the information. Changes absolutely everything.
It does.
And we're here
totally
to support people. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of what you said about supporting.
Oh. that our purpose is to support people having the understanding of how the structure works, how the mind works, how the interaction of the body-mind unit works, how things work in our world, and so that people know, and knowing they have a chance and the opportunity to change rather than just keep running and hiding.
Exactly. I was there to support Corey because I know how the work is. I explained it to him as I explained it. He did the work, and he made these discoveries himself. To me, that's the beauty of it. In explaining the love, he was so thrilled that he was able to move into a love filter and recognize the difference because he was in total hostility before, making all the wrong choices. And now he just feels so confident that everything he's doing is through love. He's working through a love filter. He loves knowing that. And I was just there for support to explain the process. And once the process is explained, when I got up to leave his table last night, he said, I've known my whole life that I need work to do, but I didn't have that toolbox, and now I have a whole toolbox. Yep, I didn't tell him that. He recognized it as tools himself. He said, I have a whole toolbox now of how to do this. He says, I've never known how to do it. And then he said, and I'm not through with you yet.
Yeah, that
he said,
is
I'm not
awesome.
through with me, and I'm not through with you. But it was a wonderful experience, and I'm so glad he called in. I wish he had stayed on because there's so much more to it that I don't feel open enough to share. But he apparently thought that both of us couldn't be on the line at once. But there's more to it, and there were some questions he was going to ask you, but I think he felt a need to get off so I could get on. But anyway, it was a wonderful process, and
perhaps he'll come back in on another show and ask the questions that he has and get ready to take it to the next level. And basically what Janie and my work and life is dedicated to. And Sam, I appreciate how you've joined us in that and how much of your time, intelligence, money, and energy has been spent in supporting people in healing. Basically, our whole everything we have is dedicated to how do we get this into the next person's hands? How do we get this into the next person's hands? How do we get it into the next person's hands? And one of the ways is, everyone that's listening to the show right now, what you understand about it, teach to somebody else. When you teach it to somebody else, you'll learn it on levels you could never learn it from me or from Sam or from Janie or from Tim. Tim, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
How do you be, sir? You have any thoughts to add to the conversation?
I do. I'm so grateful that Sam called in and her friend called in, and that it's a beautiful example of how lots can happen in a single worksheet. The thought I had to offer was that I do many, many worksheets without that kind of breakthrough, and I count each one of them valuable even though I don't have a tremendous release, because in one part I'm reminding myself every time I read through a worksheet of a different set of rules for how my mind-body energy system works than the way I was conditioned for all these years as I grew up, being told that I was a victim, that other people made me angry and other people hurt my feelings. So that even when I don't have a great breakthrough, I'm reinforcing a whole different set of observations about my mind-body energy system and how it works. The truth is, my reality is strictly internal, it's unique to me, and is created out of my own thoughts. And that makes me a real powerful creator of my own reality. And that was what I wanted to share.
Isn't that an awesome piece of information to have, to just know that, what a difference it makes?
It makes a world of difference.
And I don't know, is David there? David, are you there? Terry, are you there? Any thoughts from him?
I am here. I think we have about a minute and a half left with all of it. And thank you for the wonderful analogy, Sam. I will certainly use that. And just one quick comment. I think what I heard when Janie was asking about, when people have this, and removing the information that's in there, it's been my experience that I've seen lots of people with lots of different things, myself included, and if I'm waiting for someone else to clean out the building, to clean out the mansion, it will never get cleaned out. There's always something that someone else is doing on their own in order to clean clean out their mansion or whatever, and so I would never get to move into the mansion. No matter how many people that I hired, I'd still have to hire people and teach people how to and what it is that I wanted to remove. So I love the analogy. I'll use that, and I know there's only a few seconds left, so I look forward to tomorrow's show and support everyone in doing the work to be here tomorrow.
All right, cool, David. And tonight in Las Vegas, we've got a support group at 7 o'clock. Tomorrow night in Pahrump at the Medical Center. Unity in Las Vegas. Medical Center, we've got a possibility of an intensive this weekend. Give us a call and use the tools and bring somebody with you to tomorrow's show. Help us grow it and have the best year yet of your eternal life. Blessings.